Good evening from a rather damp and bedraggled Monte Carlo. Let's turn the clock back to lunchtime today. Here's Robin Richards.
Monte Carlo, the scene of the world's most glamorous motor race and the sole survivor of the great round-the-houses event. This year, the Monaco Grand Prix is the second of the 10 races scheduled for the 1965 World Championship. So it's between these skyscrapers, these nightclubs, hotels, the casino, and the shops that on Sunday for 195 miles, 16 cars and drivers will fight for championship points and for the honor of winning the race of 1,000 corners. What's the circuit look like? Michael Frost.
Round the houses on paper. Here's a map of the Grand Prix circuit, which is one of the few Grand Prix circuits which hasn't changed its shape in all the years the race has been run. All that's happened is the start has gone from back to where it originally was here, because after the war they used to have it on this side of the road. So you start here, you come along the promenade, round a rather nasty corner which winds tighter on you as you go, past Saint-Devote, and up the straight hill up to the casino. This is a jolly sight steeper than most people think. Round the casino bend and into the square outside the Hotel de Paris, round the wrong side of the roundabout from the French's point of view, but the right side from ours, and off down the hill to the Mirabeau Hotel. There are two shocking bumps on the way down there, and when you're up here at the casino, you can't see this at all. So you just aim for it and carry on. Round that, it's very slow, round this very slow corner, down under the bridge. You start accelerating again here, round the corner, through the tunnel, back onto the front, onto the pavement this time, and back where you started from to the gasworks hairpin. And now we'll go and try and see the thing from the air, from the helicopter, and get a really good view of it. Well, there's the swimming pool, and the start is on the front, on the left-hand side of that road, just to the left of the trees. And now we're moving off along the front in the general direction of Saint-Devote. And you can see how that corner winds tighter on you as you come to the end of the trees. You go under that footbridge, that's really the apex of the corner, and then start off up the straight to the top. And you can see it isn't quite straight. There's a nasty sort of kink in it, and you get right up there, and near the top, just coming into the middle of the picture, is a turning to the left, which you don't take, and you go on round the front of that big building, which is the Hotel de Paris, in front of the casino. You can just see the entrance to the Opera House, and now right down into the corner and the bottom of the picture, it's turning round on you. Now then, there's the roundabout, right-handed, in front of a little dip, which is actually a grandstand, and you disappear in top behind that building, which is now at the top of the picture. We shall see it in a minute, because when the drivers are driving around, they don't see at all. You go over a shocking bump there, and then off down that straight road up the left-hand side of the picture, and round the corner, which is now coming into view. It's a really shocking steep one, and you're right underneath the trees. You can't see it. Down where that white roofed car is going to the station, it's out of view now. Under there, under that bridge, out onto the front, right onto the pavement, which has carefully been made the same level as the road. Then you can really accelerate along the front here. Into that tunnel, there are about 48,000 watt lamps to make it seem the same as daylight. Out the other side, you're still on the road, you're going downhill, and then soon to the chicane. It isn't a real chicane, because you turn off the road where the white L is, off the road onto the pavement, and you're now going along the front on what is in fact the promenade. The road, you can still see it's the right, under that little bridge, which is a temporary bridge, round the gasworks. Now you're coming along the front again, back to where you started from, but you're on the promenade this time, behind those posts, those flag posts, and straight along the front, you're still on the promenade. It's the pavement you're driving on, until you get to the very far corner, where you do a complete turn round from the pavement onto the road and back to the start again. And if that isn't round the houses, I'd like to know what is.
Almost immediately practice started, the threatening clouds, which have been there all the morning, turned this afternoon into rain. Rain which obviously is going to slow the practice times enormously, as we see Graham Hill in the BRM, winner for 2 years running, and certainly must be one of the favourites this year, world champion in 1962, find his way around the 1.95 miles of this twist and turn. 10 major corners each lap, a total distance of 195 miles, in which there are no less than 1,000 corners, and that means about 2,000 gear changes or more in the whole race. At gasometer there, a tremendously hard test of transmission, right down from fifth gear to bottom, down from about 120 to 20 miles an hour, and then accelerate up again past the pits, getting up to about 110 before the tricky Santa Boat corner, taking at about 90 miles an hour. This is one great test, not only of car, but also of driver. A test, and there's Graham Hill coming into the pits, obviously something not quite right, or he may feel, and justifiably so, that with these wet conditions, it's not much point in him sweating away round and round, because he has tomorrow and the next day, as have the other drivers, to put up a really fast practice time. Because it's the practice time put up in these 3 days before Sunday's race, which means such a lot, because it's those times which determine the position on the starting grid on Sunday afternoon. Richie Ginter, the American driving a Japanese car for the first time on the soil of Monaco, comes to the hairpin, the gasworks hairpin, so-called because there used to be a gasworks there, but it's been removed this year, and accelerates in the very, very slippery conditions past the pits on one of his practice laps. The chances of the Honda in this race are certainly problematical, because they're up against some very, very serious competition indeed. And we now jump ahead of them as they come through Santa Boat and up the steep incline past the Chatham Bar and the Hermitage Hotel. Richie Ginter now, we leap ahead of him and look down upon him from the helicopter as he goes past the Hotel de Paris. This left-hand sweeping curve taken at about 70 miles an hour in the dry, perhaps 60 in the wet, because it's a treacherous curve indeed. And then up to the casino, then right, sharp right, and down, swooping down the rather narrow corridor with the nightclubs on the left and the casino gardens on the right to the Mirabeau Hotel. The right-hander there, a very difficult turn indeed, taken at about 45 miles an hour, immediately followed by a twist there as he steadies himself for the station hairpin. And the tail can perhaps sweep out now. No, he's taking it gently. Down the station hairpin about 20 miles an hour only, but accelerates viciously through and out of our sight and back again as we leap ahead of him to the seafront, onto the level bit, the only level bit of the circuit, and really the only bit worth the name of straight. Because here, as he accelerates towards the tunnel, he gets up to his highest speed, about 110 miles an hour, before he plunges into the tunnel and into darkness, out again into the sunlight, if there were sunlight indeed, and then down to the chicane. The chicane where he goes left and then sharp right, where Ascari went into the water once. We leap ahead now to Tabac, the corner which suddenly narrows as he comes towards us, taken at around, no more than 70 miles an hour in the dry, out now and onto the slightly curving front by the swimming pool and the harbour, towards the station hairpin again, 1.95 miles behind him, just one lap of 100 laps that he has to do on Sunday. Now through the station hairpin, down through 4 gears, up again through another 4, perhaps into 5 before he gets to Santa Boat to start yet another lap. About, at least 20 gear changes a lap, 2,000 gear changes a race. This is a test of transmission, a test of drivers. Indeed, some drivers lose no less than 6 pounds in weight through sheer effort and sweat. We jump ahead again to see him come past, snaking his way up in the wet there.
This is the Honda from Japan, the enigma of the season, the great unknown quantity that helps to make motor racing as fascinating as it is. Well, the Honda turned up for the first time at the German Grand Prix last August. It appeared a couple of times after that in Grand Prix races. It went fairly fast, but wasn't terribly reliable. It was a bit short on road holding and brakes. But then the team were feeling their way very carefully in this new game for them of motor racing rather than motorcycle racing. During the winter, the car's been back to Japan, and a great deal of work has been done on it in tidying up what I might call last year's rough-cut car to the machine that we see here today. A thoroughly professional-looking job, and a car which I think will go very, very quickly. Well, this is the heart of the matter here. This is the heart of the matter that may take Honda or may not take Honda to the top of the motor racing tree. It's a 12-cylinder engine in V formation, set behind the driver, and modelled not unnaturally on Honda motorcycle racing practice. and it's set in a most unusual position across the frame. Most engines obviously are lengthways in the frame. The Honda engine is across the frame. All this on top here is the fuel injection equipment. Last year, after their first race, Honda went over to fuel injection like most of the other racing cars and threw away their carburetors. And it's interesting that they, in fact, make their own fuel injection equipment.
Well, as a development driver, let's put it both into one thing. What are the problems that face you this year with the Honda?
First of all, proving its reliability, I think. It's something we just don't know. This course, of course, will be probably one of our most difficult. The first two races will be our most difficult because they're our first ones, because they're so much different than all other courses for the rest of the year. Our car is very good. It will be a competitive car, and I also hope it will be a very reliable car.
Monaco is about the only place you expect always to get dry weather. But this year, well, certainly for this day's practice here on Thursday, it's pouring down indeed. And the umbrellas, which so often were used to shield people from the sun, now become a shield from really torrential rain. What this will do to the race, well, it's early to say. Maybe it'll clear up before Sunday. But if it rains on Sunday, well, it's going to become more a test of a driver and less a test of a car. It's about 50-50, the circuit at the moment. 50% the driver, 50% the car. If it's wet, well, then it's going to need every bit of skill for a driver to keep the car on the twists and turns of this 1.95-mile circuit for 100 laps in the wet. The new boy, Jackie Stewart, at the wheel of a BRM, is perhaps the darkest horse for the World Championship honours of 1965. Already we know that Graham Hill, Jim Clark, Dan Gurney and John Surtees are almost joint favourites. Perhaps Jackie Stewart now taking the BRM away on this very wet circuit will prove himself the new boy and perhaps the victor overall. He certainly must be rated as a possible winner of Sunday's race. As we now look down on him as he comes sweeping up past the Café, the Hotel de Paris there, this fast left-hand swerve in very, very tricky conditions indeed. And Jackie Stewart, who is wisely taking it slowly there past the casino gardens, right, and then down the narrow corridor. Quite a steep descent here past that corridor with the nightclubs either side, reaching about 90 miles an hour before braking and changing down for the Mirabeau corner. Mirabeau corner, which is a sharp right-hander which goes on and never seems to end. It's followed almost immediately by a slight kink. And Jackie Stewart wisely taking it gently now on his wet weather tyres, looking very, very composed, just thinking perhaps, well, I hope it's not like this tomorrow or Saturday, or indeed in the race. As he now brings it down towards the sea level again, out we jump ahead of him, leapfrog him, so to speak, now onto the sea level and through seafront corners, it's popularly called, and onto about the only part of the circuit which could be described as level. Along the seafront there, and from the helicopter we see him now as he plunges towards the tunnel, into the tunnel, and out again into the light as he comes towards the chicane. Here, the chicane, which is taken at about 90 miles an hour by the more skillful drivers in the dry, but a lot less in wet conditions like this. And then we leap ahead again to Tabak, the corner which has been the scene of a good many multiple prangs in years gone by, one of the trickiest corners here, but it narrows considerably, and then onto the slightly curving stretch beside the harbour. Jackie Stewart in the BRM still, number 4 there. Second to Graham Hill in the BRM team. Those two are possibly both favourites for victory here. Might be Jackie Stewart, might be Graham Hill, might be Jack Brabham in the Brabham, might be Richie Ginter in the Dark Horse Honda. Jackie Stewart lifts his hands there as he moves off and accelerates now through 4 gears past the pits to start another lap. Or it might indeed be John Surtees, the reigning world champion, and Jackie Stewart comes into the pits, having just done really a feeler to see what the surface is like and whether the car is all right. And Tony Rudd, the team manager, comes forward, instructs the mechanic to lift the bonnet of the V8 BRM engine.
Monte Carlo, Monte Carlo, un printemps regardant la mer. sur les vagues.
It's not so much a town or a principality, really. It's a kind of fairy kingdom, ruled over by a fairy princess and her husband, who live in a fairy castle over the other side of the harbour. The architecture, if you look at it, is mostly fairy wedding cake. At least it was until they started building flats and turned it into layer cake. And that's probably been brought about by the fairy godfather, who turned his pumpkin into a yacht. Aristotle Onassis, the Christina's there on the other side of the harbour. But like all fairy tales, it's an illusion, really. It isn't as wonderful as all that. The weather, the sun doesn't always shine. It didn't this afternoon. Whenever I go to the casino, it's dull and empty, and I don't think anybody's shot themselves on the terrace for years. No matter what happens, it doesn't really ever live up to it. That's what happens whenever you come to something which is really an illusion. And of course, it's a fairy weekend for the Grand Prix too. It's a fairy Grand Prix. If you lose the car here, you don't just go onto the grass and hit a marshal on the infield. You either hit something rather solid, or you're likely to go through the window of Van Cleef and Arpels and take £250,000 worth of diamonds with you. People will tell you, of course, that it's all done for money, that the Grand Prix is just something for the oil companies to get rich over. But this isn't entirely true. Just filling 400 or 500 hotel bedrooms for Thursday to Monday, this doesn't make a town rich. What matters to Monte Carlo is keeping the fairy story alive, and the rally at Christmas and the race, the Grand Prix at this time of year, does keep that image going, and this is what matters. They don't bleed you when you come here for the race. You can get one of the best seats for about 4.5 guineas. But of course, if you want to live here, you want a flat here, you're likely to pay, I don't know, something like £30,000 for it. Land is so valuable that in fact they've put the railway through a tunnel, because a mile or so of land that used to be a railway line is worth a king's ransom. One can't help wondering whether the mythical Midas didn't have a hand in making Monte Carlo. Everything they do here, from the penthouse to the poorhouse, from a motor race to a meringue, turns to gold. Everything here turns to gold.
Well, here by the swimming pool, we have the winners of the last 5 races at Monte Carlo. With me are Sterling Moss and Tony Rudd, the team manager of BRM, and with Robin Richards are Graham Hill and Bruce McLaren and John Surtees. Now, Sterling, you're the only man ever to have won this Monaco Grand Prix 3 times. First time in a Maserati, and then again twice in Rob Walker's Lotus.
Yes.
What are your main memories of these races?
Well, apart from that I was happy to win the races, I think the main thing about this is how enjoyable the circuit is. It's a very personal circuit. The proximity of the crowds, you are very conscious of this, because the people are right on the edge of the roads, and of course they're packing all the windows around it. And they're very sympathetic sort of people. They're very keen, and you've got the harbour on the side. I think it is one of the most demanding circuits certainly of its type in the world.
But many people believe that the 1961 race that you won, when the Ferraris hounded you practically for 3 hours on end, was one of your very greatest races. Would you agree with this?
I think it is, Max, because in that race, it's a 100-lap race, and for 90 laps, that's 90% of the race, I was absolutely flat out through every corner, every braking. And I remember I'd go into a corner and say, well, I'll make this the perfect lap, and then I'll see if they can catch me. And then the next corner, I might make a slight mistake and I'd start again. And so, yes, I think it was most likely that.
Well, this year, you're entering a car of your own in the Formula 3 supporting race for Charles Crichton Stewart to drive, so you've still got a finger in motor racing, quite a considerable finger. But comes the start of the Grand Prix on Sunday afternoon, would you like still to be out there with them?
You don't have to wait till Sunday afternoon. I'd like to have been out there today when I saw them practicing, certainly. I think it'd be foolish, but I'd like to do it.
Thank you very much, Sterling. Tony, what are the team manager's problems in this particular race?
We always seem to run out of the vital fluids, petrol and oil here.
Does it mean, in fact, with the very demanding race and the hard work that the gearbox and the engine have to do, does this mean that the cars wear out quicker than possibly in some other races?
No, I think they might wear out a little quicker, but it's a very long race. It's about 2 hours 40 minutes compared with 2 hours for an average race. I think that shows a lot of things up.
From now on, throughout the season, Grand Prix follow each other at about regular intervals of a fortnight between them. Does this throw a very great strain on the team, and what are the strains that thrown on the team and the mechanics and yourself in particular?
Well, the greatest strain is on our engine shop, way back at Bourne, because we only have between 5, sometimes 4 days with the cars back in the works. Engines have to be taken out, overhauled, tested and put back in the cars and get us away within 4 or 5 days. It's our engine shop that suffers with this.
Thank you very much, Tony.
And with me, I have on my far left Bruce McLaren, who won in 1962, and next to me, Graham Hill, who won the last 2 years, and on my right, John Surtees, who hasn't won yet, but who was world champion, or reigning world champion. Obviously have to put that right on Sunday. Graham, how does this race compare with others in the World Championship as far as toughness on the driver is concerned, physical effort?
It's definitely one of the toughest, if not the toughest, races of the year. It's the shortest circuit in length, but it takes the longest time. It takes about 2 hours 40 minutes if it's dry, as opposed to about 2 hours 10 minutes. But the nature of the circuit is such that you require tremendous concentration, and there's no point where you can let up and perhaps have a little rest down a straight, for instance.
John, what do you think is the hardest aspect from the driver's point of view, if it is not concentration?
Well, of course, concentration is possibly the one, but the other point is that you're liable to have a number of cars running rather close together, and with the shortness of a circuit, passing is terribly difficult, and also the fact that you tend to get a considerable amount of fumes and things like this. I think physical-wise, it's possibly the hardest race, also because it comes early in the year, and you're still sort of getting into the groove.
Bruce, which do you reckon is the hardest corner, the most difficult corner on the Monaco circuit?
I would say definitely, Robin, the chicane, and not so much a corner as a left-right, very tricky section where we burst out of the tunnel, down a straight, very nearly maximum speed, and then we shoot downhill into this just about 100 mile an hour dodge between two walls out onto the seafront. It's a very tricky section. If you make any sort of a mistake at all, you've got quite a problem on your hands.
What speed do you reckon to take the chicane at?
About 100 mile an hour right in the middle of it, and then as we come out, we accelerate back up to 110 probably. With the car right, it's a fairly bumpy section of the circuit, and the car's actually spinning its rear wheels all the time, and you can get quite sideways on with very little trouble.
Graham, how do you reckon Honda's chances of winning?
Well, unfortunately, today was wet, so we didn't get a very good picture of the progress that they have made since last year. They seem to have got quite a bit of power, and looking at the rear end of their car, they've made quite a lot of improvements. It certainly looks a lot more sanitary than it did last year, and I would say with the drivers that they've got this year that they stand a lot better chance than they did last year, and I think they're going to be quite a threat.
John, and I'm using this particular microphone to try and keep out some of the noise that this jet-assisted helicopter is making. Well, there are still 2 more practice sessions to go yet for this Monaco Grand Prix. 2 more practice sessions before we know whether it's Hill or Honda. And the next practice session is at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. There's no time for a good lie-in Monaco at race time. Good night.